last, two of our favorite guys, Tom Shircliff and Rob Murchison. Hello, gentlemen.
Great to
see
you.
Good to see you. I don't think I've seen much of you this entire
going?
conference. How's it been so far? How's the conference been treating you?
Really great. It's
Yeah.
been one of the biggest ones ever, as you
Yeah.
know, and it's always fun to see also in things like the pre-conference, the boot camp, all the new faces that keep coming in.
Yeah, this definitely has been a year for new faces, new apps, lots of innovation, lots of investment in innovation. What are you seeing out there that's exciting?
Well, there's lots of new analytics that's always coming in, and that's been pretty good to see.
More data, more ways to look at the data, more ways to mine the treasure trove of the data. When you guys advise your clients, what directions are you heading them in this neighborhood?
Well, two things. One, we think it's becoming more of a top-down environment, a building owner environment, where they are going to take more responsibility for their own data.
Yeah.
And getting and holding that data, but also really critically the cybersecurity is becoming really a foundational issue.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point that a lot of our customers are leading with looking at the cybersecurity aspect of things before they go to the broader conversation of the data, because we're learning from our experiences and them talking with their peers that if you don't go to address the cybersecurity aspect of the building control system, you're not going to propagate the value of data within the organization.
Right.
And that's the important point, is that cybersecurity is a topic in the news everywhere, and especially at groups, conference, like we want to emphasize this is not about payroll data, credit card data. This is building control systems, cybersecurity, your elevator, your HVAC, your lighting, your metering, that kind of thing.
One of the guys who we had on earlier was telling us stories about the building security being breached through a copy printer. They went in through that and then were able to ransom the company, and another company that in this case, his company was able to shut down the attack, but in another case, which he wasn't involved in, they were able to stop the attack, but there was no backup because the old backup was on the same system that everything else was on. So, you're right, it makes no sense to invest millions in a system if you're not securing that system. But in what ways are we progressing on the timeline that we thought smart buildings would be progressing on?
I think actually cyber is something that could slow it down or speed it up. I think that the innovation is there, the technology is there. We're not missing anything, or we're not waiting for anything. So it's really a matter of willpower and a plan and feeling that there's security. But I did want to touch on something that we want to emphasize on the cyber.
Sure.
Is that it is, especially at a conference like this, it's not smart buildings that bring the cyber risk into play. It's 30 years of digital control systems that were internet connectable that created the problem. So the problem is out there by the millions, and really the smart buildings topic is at least bringing the conversation up and dealing with it.
Right.
So we don't want that misunderstanding that smart and more connected means more risk. It's really a 30-year problem.
Well, I mean, it would have been silly not to connect those control systems to the internet, right? I mean, you wanted to have some way to control them, but you're just talking about putting the security layer over it.
Well, Rob can tell you he has a networking background.
Yeah.
Those systems were put in and connected to the internet, but not by IT professionals, but by building contractors.
I mean, if you look back to what Tom was saying, 30 years, digital controls came into the industry in the mid-'80s.
Right.
And back then, the internet hadn't started.
Yeah.
But needed to get remote access, so we'd have phone lines and we'd dial in, and then this great thing of the internet came along and someone said, oh, that's great, now I can connect all this time, but nobody was thinking about security.
Right.
And with the average age of a building, way over 30 years, there are organizations that have just put control systems in without thinking about cyber because it just wasn't part of the conversation. And now, since we had situations like Target a few years ago, the awareness has come up into the boardroom. And a lot of folks say that at the board level, soon you'll have a chief risk officer as part of the decision-making process at the board level. And the biggest asset that an organization has is going to be the building. How are we going to address the 3.6 billion devices that exist inside of buildings?
And Jerry, this gets to your point about the next generation of smart buildings.
Yeah.
We think the next generation of smart buildings is going to, as we said earlier, is going to be more owner-driven. So if you have 100 buildings out there, you have many hundreds of contractors and solutions. You can't count on or interview each one of them for their cyber worthiness.
Right.
The building owner is going to have their own cyber plan, their own cyber security, and then vendors plug into that. So that's part of this next generation. It used to be the vendor responsibility. Now it's going to be the building owner responsibility.
Which means that a company like Intelligent Buildings, it becomes much more important because that building owner, for us to think that he, as a real estate investor and owner, is going to have the breadth of connection to the different vendors is, it would be almost, maybe Jim Young could maybe know enough people to know what the best of breed is across but really, I think what you guys do, advising people, is going to become more and more important because there's now so many pieces to juggle.
They're going to have to take on issues they hadn't taken on before, but as Rob was alluding to at the C-suite, this is a corporate risk officer issue.
Yeah.
It's a life safety issue when you're talking about elevators and HVAC. It's a productivity issue, a brand issue, a capital equipment damage issue. So yeah,
what's interesting is in order to do data-driven decision making, which is what we're after, and ultimately data-driven actions, right? Because if you don't take an action, I'm sure you've heard from many of your other guests.
Right. If
you don't take action on what the data set do, you aren't going to get any results.
Right.
But in order to make that happen, data has to come out of the building, therefore cyber is important. But now what we're seeing is cyber is important even if you don't want to get data out of the building just because of the vulnerability that exists inside of it. And a lot of folks don't even know what their risk is.
Well, how do you as a company help them assess that risk and the specifics of it?
Well, you said the key word is assess.
Yeah.
Because it is so fragmented down there at the controls level, and you could have 24 or more vendors in one building. You really do have to do an assessment. And we developed an assessment scoring system that's based on NIST, which is a national cybersecurity framework, that it's a very objective scoring. And so you really do need to figure out what is in there and what are the risks categorically, and then you can start to remediate and prioritize what you're going to do.
Can you guys tell me about a success story of one of your clients who maybe came to you a little less prepared and now is prepared?
Yeah, we can't tell you names
Sure.
because of the topic, but we can tell you a REIT that we were working with wanted to come and have 2 or 3 buildings assessed,
Sure.
so they could just sort of understand the issue. And of course, when we started looking into it, they started peeling back the onion. They realized that this type of operational technology is not the same thing as information technology, and then it was a big deal, but they insisted that the elevator was not to worry because they never connect their elevators, and by sundown, our director of cyber has sent them a screenshot of the login for their elevator.
And I want to point out something real important here. That sort of freaked them out.
Yeah.
But we've also learned that there is we have what are called certified ethical hackers,
That's
right? So when we go about this, we're doing this in a kind way, not in a negative way. But one of the things that you want to be able to do as you assess all this stuff is go find all those login screens and then bring that to your team's attention and say, guess what? The default password, admin or something, it's there and you logged in. We just recently did our tech guys have the ability to go scan the entire internet of devices that are sitting out there. And we went across all the controls manufacturers.
Oh.
And there were somewhere on the order of, 50 to 75,000 devices that are major controls manufacturers that we, if we wanted to, could log into it. Any basic person could log into because we know they just have the default passwords.
That's kind of terrible. I mean, let's just face it, that's really bad.
It is a really large, really soft target, but what we want to do is create the awareness, because what we find, whether it's government, corporate, commercial, healthcare, financial services, nobody really has the responsibility. There's plenty of cybersecurity going on their enterprise network,
right,
and there's plenty of facilities technology going on, but the cybersecurity for the building control systems usually gets falling between the cracks.
Guys, you've opened our eyes to a number of important issues. Is there anything else coming out of Intelligent Buildings that people should take away from what you're taking away from Realcomm 2017?
Yeah, I think one more thought is that because of the maturity of the conference and the industry, you ask how it was progressing, we are seeing more and more large enterprise companies and portfolios really asking for a complete strategy. They've seen all the point solutions, they've seen all the different components, and they used to go for point solutions, and now they really understand this is part of a plan. So that's pretty encouraging to see people say, we really want to go across our portfolio.
People are beginning to understand how to approach
more
this.
comprehensively.
And I would say, and this has always been the case, but it's important to emphasize that technology is advancing. The technology that we need already exists. It's going to get better. But unless you include people in your solution, and the organization has an awareness around the people in the solution, whether it be the third-party maintenance contractors to the CFOs to the security folks, you're not going to get a complete solution. So it's very important to look at it holistically.
A little bit of change management.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for being here today, and thanks for always
Great
being
to see
part
you
of
again.
RealCom.
Enjoyed that.
And I'll see you after the conference.
Okay,
You bet.
thank you,
Cheers,
Jerry.
thanks, Rob.
Have
Thanks,
a good day.
Tom. You too. Well.